Jujutsu Infinite has been doing absolute numbers on Roblox recently, averaging well over 100,000 players consistently for days after its release, and with so much popularity surrounding the game, I decided to try it out myself, grind it for a couple hours so I could give a review of the game. And that's a couple hours of my life I'm never gonna get back. Before we start this review, I will mention that this game has been heavily compared to Blox Fruits over these past few days. And why that is pretty understandable. Both games require you to beat bandits to level up. Both games have powerful abilities that get exponentially better the more rare the ability is. And both games are heavily rewarding to whoever spends the most money. So it's no surprise that a lot of people are going to call this game Blox Fruits but Jujutsu Kaisen. I will say the combat in this game is leaps and bounds above Blox Fruits, and there is absolutely no contest on that. M1s are actually worth doing in this game. There's a lot more nuances to the combat, and it feels more fun to play than Blox Fruits ever will be. But having Blox Fruits as the bar for how good your game is already a bad start to begin with. So without any further ado, let's start it off on a positive note with the good. For starters, this game has one of the best tutorial systems that I've ever seen across any Roblox game on the platform. Unfortunately, I forgot to record that, so we're going to be using someone else's footage, but the tutorial puts you, your avatar, in a battle with Sukuna, and it looks like all your teammates got murked. He's about to do the same to you, and just in the nick of time, who comes to save you? Gojo. And then Gojo and Sukuna have a cool little fighting animation. And during the fight animation, you play as Gojo, and you get to beat Sukuna's ass. But while you're doing that, it also teaches you the basics of combat. It teaches you dashing, blocking, how to use Black Flash, how to use chanting abilities when you use your technique, how to use your rushdown. It very tastefully teaches the player all of the basics of combat within the game. And I believe that to be a very positive thing and a huge strong suit for this game. Although I will say, after the tutorial, everything sort of goes downhill. We'll get into that later. The tutorial is really great. Not only because it actually teaches the players things that they would have otherwise not have known because the controls aren't on the game's little description. So had you not had this tutorial, most players would have just had to figure it out by word of mouth, YouTube, having to read the wiki of the game, and that's lame. So I'm really glad that the developers went through that little bit of extra effort to craft a pretty cool boss fight where you play as Gojo and you simultaneously learn how to play the game. Also, this tutorial attempts to give some sort of narrative and canonical relevance as to why your character is doing what they're doing. At the end of the boss fight, Gojo and Sukuna have a little domain clash, and the energy between the domain clashes causes like a rift in reality or something, and you get sucked into it, and that's how you end up in Jujutsu Academy, and that's where you start your journey. I really enjoy when games do things like this, because although story modes or any type of narrative story within a Roblox game is usually an afterthought and not very good, this game is no exception. I still really like when games put that extra effort to try to give your character some meaning within the world. I know that I'm hyping up this tutorial a lot, and I'll move on from this since this segment lasted longer than I wanted it to anyway, but I really can't understate how well executed I think this tutorial is. And personally for me, this was the high point of the game. This was the peak. And I know it sounds pretty bad when I tell you that the first 5 minutes of gameplay were the most fun that I had in the game, but I really do mean it when I say that this is what got me hooked in the first place. This is what made me spend hours grinding levels, and spoiler alert, I'm not even max level. I can't be asked to get to max level. I'd have more fun staring at paint dry than I would getting to max level in this game, so I'm just not going to do it. Anyways, that's enough about the tutorial. Let's move on to the other aspects that I find good. This game knows its primary audience, and it knows it well. Children, because this game does a very good job at making you feel like you're strong. It does a great job at satisfying the power fantasy that is being a Jujutsu sorcerer, and I think this is the point that goes in its favor. When I was doing my first 40 levels or so of the game, I felt like I was on top of the world. I felt like I was goated. I felt like a special grade sorcerer. I was just beating everyone's ass. Until eventually I realized that I was fighting literal vegetables, and the AI in this game basically lets you win. Like, you could set up an auto clicker and beat most, if not all, of the missions in this game with little to no effort. The game is incredibly easy. Saying that it handholds you, is kind of an understatement. It more so picks you up and throws you across the finish line without you having to do anything. But like I said, I think this is actually a strong suit for this game. If you were going into this game expecting some sort of Souls-like experience where the enemies were actually supposed to be hard, you know, you're going to be disappointed. I'm sorry to say, this game is a bandit beater at heart, and what are bandit beaters good at? Making the players feel strong. And this game does a very, very good job at that. Another thing this game does a very good job at is giving out techniques very, very easily. And I think that is extremely important for games like this, where techniques are basically the bread and butter. Most of your moves, domain expansions, combos, anything that you actually want to do in the game, probably going to involve some sort of technique. So I'm glad that the game starts you off pretty generously with about 60 rerolls, I believe. I redeemed all the codes and I had about 60. And with those, I was able to get myself a legendary Volcano. And later on, I grinded some more rerolls and I got myself the Hydro, the water one. So with those two legendaries, I was able to progress without any troubles at all. In fact, it was pretty fun using the moves. I will say, anything that's common, uncommon, or rare is very evidently made to be far, far worse than the higher rarity techniques. And I know this is because they want players to spend more money on the game and try to keep gambling for those super rare techniques. This game doesn't lend itself to balancing at all, as do most bandit beaters on the platform. What's rarer is always just going to be better. But, like I said, I really do appreciate how abundantly easy it is to get technique rerolls. You can get them through the AFK world, you can get them through the daily challenge, you can get them through codes. It's not hard to get technique rerolls, so I'm definitely going to put that as a plus. Let's move on. We can't gloss over how good the game itself looks. In terms of Jujutsu Kaisen games, I'm going to put this as one of the highest quality Jujutsu Kaisen games that you can play on Roblox. That's assuming that Sorcery isn't out at the time that I'm making this video, because I do like that game more, but in terms of graphics, visuals alone, this game does a absolutely great job at that. Every move looks very satisfying to use. It is very satisfying to use. All of the flashy colors, effects, and explosions are one of the main reasons that this game is as popular as it is. Like I said, they know their audience well. Children love the flashy colors on the screen. In fact, you don't even have to be a child. My monkey brain was having its neurons activated when I saw me doing big, cool, flashy moves and dealing damage. Once again, that's a plus. That's something that I'm sure a lot of people are going to enjoy. You can definitely accredit part of their success to how good the game looks, but now let's move on. The combat for this game is also very easy to grasp, with the tutorial doing a pretty good job at showing you what to do, H to evade, E to rush, Q to dodge. All of these combat implementations make the game run very smoothly in terms of combat. You can seamlessly chain one rush into the other after doing your moves, your combo extenders. I myself had a lot of fun just playing around with the combat for a little bit. I will say it does get pretty boring after a while. We'll get into that later. I do like the combat in this game for what it is, although endgame combat, from what I've heard, just evolves into move spam, very reminiscent of Blox Fruits. The combat is still fun in my opinion. Fun for 50 levels or so, and then you kind of start questioning things a little bit. Still, I like the combat. Something else that I liked about the game were the movement mechanics, and I know that being able to infinitely spam your dashes and your rushes to not touch the ground is cartoonish and very, very unrealistic even in the Jujutsu Kaisen world. I personally enjoyed that aspect of the game, just because I know that this game was never setting out to be something serious. It is a bandit beating cash grab. This game's movement system is almost reminiscent of a parkour game, and I low-key had fun just running around the map, as big as it is. It's pretty empty, but it does give you a lot of space to just play around with your movement. So that's something that I'd include as a plus. Let's move on. The last thing that I will put in the good section is this game's story mode, or storyline, whatever you want to call it. I enjoy the fact that this game makes an attempt to add some sort of narrative behind your progression within the game. And although the story definitely feels like an afterthought, it's just talk to NPC, go from point A to point B, I do like this as a nice little change of pace from the usual missions that you're going to have to grind out from level 1 to max, which is quite literally the same set of missions. This provides a nice change of pace, gives you decent rewards, and just makes the game that much more engaging. Just a teensy tiny bit more. But still, I'd include that in the good. I liked it personally. Now we can move on to the bad. Holy monetization. The 3 screenshots that I have in front of you right now aren't even half of the shits that you can buy in this game, and it's just it's criminal. It's genuinely criminal how much of a cash grab this game is. You have to pay to store your techniques in a bag. You have to pay to have more than 2 slots for techniques. You have to pay to skip the animation for techniques. You can pay to have a literal fighting style, heavenly restriction, that is really, really good. I've seen some gameplay of it. It seems very, very good. In fact, it seems like it's a direct counter to a lot of technique builds. Surprise, surprise, technique builds are 90% of the people playing this game. So calling the game pay to win is an insult to pay to win games. This is just like a pay to have fun type game. Pay to load it up. Pay to think about the game. Like, this is pretty up there in terms of scummy, greedy monetization practices. These guys are rivaling Pet Sim and Pets Go, because oh my goodness, the amount of game passes, the sheer amount of monetization inside of this game is absolutely crazy. And even if you're not paying anything, even if you're not buying any game passes, they're still going to try to wring money out of you through the AFK world, because the AFK world gives 50% more rewards to people that have premium so they can farm the premium payouts. This game is just the pinnacle of cash grab. This game it has one goal only, and that is to wring out the player base of as much Robux as they possibly can. And with how successful this game is, right now it has like 240,000 concurrent players. These devs are raking in the big bucks. These guys can basically retire off this game if they wanted to. They're rich. They are rich with the copious amounts of game passes. Pay for double XP, pay for double cash, pay for heavenly restriction, pay to skip the animation of summons, pay for this, pay for that. They are set. These guys, they had a goal, and damn, you can bet your ass that they completed that goal. That was to make money, and they succeeded. In fact, these dudes were making money before the game was even officially released. People had to pay to quote-unquote test the game. Let's be honest, no one was actually testing the game. It was just to play the game early. It was basically like putting a price tag on the game. People weren't going to pay a subscription service to log into their 9-to-5 shift of testing for Jujutsu Infinite. Nobody gave a fuck. They just wanted to try out the game. And I look at footage from quote-unquote testing, and I look at footage of release. I noticed no drastic gameplay quality differences. I noticed nothing too out of the norm to constitute the devs taking this long of a hiatus to officially release it to the public. I think they just didn't want to work on it. Who knows? That's just my personal headcanon. What I'm trying to say is this game is a very, very, very blatant cash grab. That's not to say that you can't enjoy the game, because obviously a lot of people enjoy the game, right? Like, they are objectively a very successful game. If you look at the numbers, the numbers don't lie. These guys are successful because people enjoy their game. That does not take away from the fact that this is a very, very blatant cash grab, and we're going to have to put that in the bat, obviously. It is unfortunate that a group of talented developers like these guys who have the ability to make something really, really good choose to join the dark side of monetization and pay-to-win game passes and just pay-to-win everything. Anyways, let's move on. Another thing that I think is bad about this game is that the grind to max level is absolutely monotonous. And I know that complaining that a bandit beater is boring to grind in is like complaining that the sky is blue. I know, I'm aware. But for a game like this that tries, I know I can very clearly see that there's an effort for progression. The effort is there. The execution was just absolutely terrible, because what do you do from levels 1 to max? You get a mission, you complete it. You get a mission, you complete it. You get a mission, you complete it. You do this over and over and over and over again. It is a never-ending cycle until eventually you reach max level. And this wouldn't be as bad if the missions were actually different. To an extent, people could call Deepwoken a bandit beater, because by definition, you are beating enemies to increase your power level to get stronger. But you know what the difference is between this game and Deepwoken? Is that Deepwoken's progression, number one, respects your time, because it doesn't take that long to get to max level. If you know what you're doing, you could literally bang out a level 20 account in a singular day, way less than a day. Getting to max level in Jujutsu Infinite is going to take you well over a couple days. Now, I don't mean 24 hours of non-stop grinding, but it is going to take you multiple days of progressing relentlessly just to reach that level 420. I think that's the cap right now, 440, 400 something. To reach the level cap, you are going to be grinding for a very, 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 very long time. That's assuming that you don't buy any of the double XP things, because if you do it, obviously that'll exponentially help you out. But we're just going to assume that you are the average player who doesn't have Robux to drop on the game and just wants to enjoy it for free. good luck getting to max level. That is going to be a very unfun process. And also, Deepwoken's progression is actually difficult. And I say difficult in air quotes because I know if you're a Deepwoken nerd who plays the game day and night, progression for you could probably do that shit with your eyes closed. But by Roblox standards, Deepwoken has pretty difficult progression, and this game is on the other side of the spectrum. Way, way on the other side of the spectrum. This game is laughably easy. So easy where it feels like your actions are non-consequential, because anything that you do in this game, there is a 99.9% chance that you will not die. In fact, throughout my entire time playing this game, from progressing from level 0 all the way to 200 something, I never once died. I don't even think I got below half health throughout my entire playthrough, because the game is just that easy. There are no threatening mechanics to the player. There is nothing that screams danger in this game. No. You are the danger. Like, there's nothing that can pose a threat to you within this game. The bosses are a joke. You can just spam moves, run away, repeat. They barely do any damage. The enemies in this game, they basically try to tickle you to death with how little damage they do. In fact, you probably have a better chance at dying in this game if you mash random buttons on your keyboard and accidentally reset your character. That is how easy this game is. Every single mission is just go from point A to point B and beat up enemies. And the enemies aren't hard either, which is why the grind just felt so boring and monotonous to me, because not only do none of the missions pose an actual challenge, when your game design relies on the fact that the game is incredibly easy, it as a result makes everything feel non-consequential and unrewarding, which is why I myself had to call it quits after level 200 something. I could not put my brain through more of this torture. I just had enough. I know that some people are going to say, oh, but Perry, you can do investigations, you can go fight bosses. What does that boil down to? Tell me what both of those activities boil down to. You go beat up enemies, spam your moves, get XP. And okay, I'll say this. Fighting bosses is way more fun than doing missions, just because bosses have unique movesets. They can pop their domain expansion. You can grind it with your friends to get extra luck, so you have a higher chance of grinding out whatever secret super rare item you were trying to get. Sure, bosses are a lot more fun to grind out, but at the same time, it's like, the bosses don't pose a threat to any of the players. No one in your party is going to come remotely close to dying, even if they are AFK. That is how easy boss fights are. And the fact that it's that easy just makes it feel so painfully unrewarding, because 99.9% of the time, whatever you get in your boss chest is going to be some absolute garbage anyway, and then you get that one super rare drop that you spent hours grinding for. That's just game design that I don't really enjoy personally. Again, if you like Bandit beaters and you like playing these games day in and day out, beating up enemies, getting cool moves, making your character stronger, all the power to you. I am not going to knock you for enjoying what you enjoy, but I personally would view that as a flaw in the game, and it's definitely somewhere that they come short, because this game definitely had the potential to be a very, very fun Jujutsu Kaisen game. If only they abandoned the progression system that they have now for something a little bit more fun. You know, the game is fun, don't get me wrong. I had fun playing this game. I admitted to the fact that I like seeing my character do cool moves, and beating up curses was fun to me. But after the 400th mission, where you have to go beat up curses at X location, I start thinking to myself, is there anything else to do in this game? Is this all that I'm going to have to do for the next couple of hours to get to max level? And that really just killed the game for me. Something else that I think is bad about this game is the sheer size of the map. I think the map is way too big. And I know what the devs were going for with this. I know what the attempt was, right? They wanted a very large and grandiose map to make it feel like your character was just a small speck in a huge, ever-changing world that is Jujutsu Kaisen. And it also goes hand in hand with the mechanic of missions, because you go, you choose your mission, you press J, and you teleport into the sky and you start dropping down. That was also pretty cool. I forgot to mention that in the good. I like the little press J to warp into the air and land on your enemies thing. I think that's really, really cool. I wish more games did stuff like that. But here's the thing. The fact that this game's map is so big is a double-edged sword. It actively harms the game, because the map is big, sure, but it's big just for the sake of it. There's no substance within said map to constitute the size of it. And that's why it personally becomes a gripe for me, because after a while, you're just running around empty space trying to get from point A to point B if you're not using the warp. And it's kind of just like, don't really enjoy this. Before I end the video, I want to give some of my personal suggestions as to little things that I do to improve the game. because I know that as a Roblox player, it's very easy to critique things after the fact. You know, when you're looking at things in retrospect, it's very easy to point out the flaws in something. So I'll try to give some sort of constructive criticism before I end the video off, so we can end it on somewhat of a high note. Number one, I think you need to add more missions into your little mission pool. Right now, I believe there's only 3 missions. Go defeat curses, go defeat a band of cursed users, go defeat a single cursed user, and capture a point. Okay, so I think it's 4. But these 4 missions may seem like a lot to a player that's first getting started because they haven't actually played the game. After about 10 to 15 minutes of just doing a recycled loop of all 4 missions, it just gets so boring. And at the same time, most of these missions aren't very time efficient. If you want to grind efficiently, I think the best thing you can do is grind out normal curses and cursed users. So I'm just going to be avoiding the other 2 anyway. I really wish, number 1, I wish that there was more missions. Number 2, I wish there was a higher difficulty of missions. Right now, I believe it scales up to 4 stars at most, with 4 stars giving the most XP. I think you should add like all the way up to 10 stars, just so players who are good at the game or know what they're doing might be able to progress a little bit faster. Add more mission difficulties. Make the mission difficulties not only more rewarding, but also more lucrative to the player. Because number 1, this would make progression 10 times better. If you could speed up your progression by doing harder missions that are rare to find on the little mission board, I would absolutely love that. And on top of that, it might give players that are already max an incentive to keep doing the mission board, because maybe some of these super rare missions can drop you some very good items. I would really love to see more missions in this game. Whether those missions can even be remotely close to hard, like I mentioned before, I doubt it. This game doesn't really lend itself to difficulty. Still, something that I would love to see in the game are more missions. Something else that I'd like to see is changes to the current chest UI and mechanics. Right now, you complete a couple missions, you get 2 chests, they start hovering around you, and you have to press E to open them, and you can flip all to reveal what's behind each card. That becomes annoying very quickly. Number 1, I want there to be a little chest inventory, right? Like you open your bag and it's like, oh, you have this amount of chests that you can open. Then you can choose whether you want to open them or not. Forcing players to open them as soon as they get them is kind of annoying. It hovers around your character, and if you press E, it'll just open the little UI anyway. I think that's annoying. Also, make the flip all button on the chest actually flip all of the cards. Right now, if you press it once, if there's a higher rarity item in your chest, you have to press it multiple times before it'll flip all of the cards. And I know that the point of that is to add that little bit of suspense of, oh, I got something rare, what am I going to get? That gets very boring and very annoying very quickly. I really want there to be at least an option that you can toggle to make it so it'll actually flip all of the cards at once. I don't care if I got something super rare, just let me see it at once. That little mechanic where you have to press it multiple times, it eats up a couple extra seconds, and although that may not seem like a lot, when you're grinding for hours, it adds up. Definitely adds up, and it's just, I'm over it. Something else that I'd like to see, make use of the big map. You have the opportunity to do some really cool things with the map, and I think that you just need to give the devs a little bit of time to hopefully add some things within this huge map. There is so much space to add more unique bosses, different missions, maybe some type of world events, cough cough Deepwoken. Stuff like that I think would really give some more life into this map. Because right now, not only does the map feel big and empty, it feels lifeless. There's just nothing for you to interact with if you're not doing missions. So maybe that's something that they could improve upon in the future. Finally, the last suggestion that I'd like to include is add a way for free-to-play players to obtain some of the game passes. Maybe add a way that you can grind out credits towards more innate slots. Add a way that you could grind out a free innate bag. Add a way for you to get Toji for free, the fighting style, the heavenly restriction. I think these changes would go much appreciated by the player base, because the people who do want to pay for it without going through all that like long grind, they're still going to get their money's worth. They're going to be saving their time. And the people who are hardcore grinders of the game will have an incentive to not only keep playing, but to go work towards something. I really see this as a win-win, but I know when I use the word free-to-play and Game Pass in the same sentence, the owners of this game might look at me like I'm speaking Voldemort's name and might not want to listen at all. So, yeah, take that with a grain of salt. It's probably not going to happen, but that is going to bring us into the end of today's video. This one was a bit of a longer one. I just had a lot to say about the game, but I think we're done here. Not much more for me to comment on, so what are my closing thoughts? The game's fun, but it feels like wasted potential more than anything else. It is just a Jujutsu Kaisen bandit beater. If those things are up your alley, if you like bandit beaters, you are going to love this game. And if you like bandit beaters and you like Jujutsu Kaisen, man, you are going to have a field day in this game. But it is personally just not my cup of tea. If you like it, hey, all power to you. Keep enjoying this game. There's nothing wrong with liking whatever Roblox game you want to like. Like I said, it's just not my thing. With all that being said, thank you for watching. Have a great day or night wherever you are. Stay tuned for more content, and we'll catch you in the next one.